Hello, today I'd like to talk about the terrors of being pregnant. And certainly I'm not pregnant myself, but my wife and I are expecting our first child in about a month. So who knows when he'll arrive. Sometimes they're early, sometimes they're late. Hopefully he's coming. Um, but I'd like to talk about more about the terror, the horror, um, that we're trying to convey in that game, and that myself as an expectant parent am faced with. And I think it's something that not everyone talks about. You get a lot of people talking about, like, oh, my pregnancy was so beautiful, and I have one friend who misses being pregnant. She really loved, having her kid with her at all times, and I can certainly understand that. But I think there's a lot of terrifying aspects that go along with it, and for a first-time parent like myself, it's been very scary, and I think it's something that weighs heavily on me, and I think it's something worth talking about, something worth expressing through devastated dreams. And I don't want to get into the specific medical history of our family, but there's been trips to the ER. You think something's going wrong. There's trips to labor and delivery, when you're further along and you think, maybe the baby's coming, maybe it's not ready, what do we do? And I think, especially for first-time parents, it's so tough because the woman's body undergoes so many changes that it's impossible to know what to expect and what's normal. There's just so many new sensations. And if you're someone with anxiety, a lot of anxiety like myself, there's always all or nothing thinking, this sort of catastrophizing that, this new sensation, maybe it's wrong, I haven't felt the baby kick for a while, maybe there's something wrong, maybe the baby's not going to be in the, breech position, or rather, maybe the baby's going to be in breech and that'll be a problem, or maybe the umbilical cord will be doing bad things, and there's so many things that can go wrong, and it's weird because to some extent, making a baby is so easy, and it's like, oh, well, I guess it depends, on the couple, but, some people probably have babies, unintentionally. I think that's a safe assumption, but other people, really are invested into their child and, work at having a child. And certainly there's a broad spectrum, but I think, for those who are excited about having kids, you're really invested in that child. You feel a connection to your unborn child, and so you really, really don't want anything to happen to your child, and it's a strange feeling, because all I know about my child is just what I've seen in ultrasounds, and they didn't look like anything to me. I don't know. We're due for our I think our like 36-week ultrasound soon, so hopefully that'll be more telling. But it's just, I love the little guy. I can't explain it any better than that, and but because I love for him, because I care for him, it's really challenging. There's a lot to worry about, to get to the actual delivery, and then there's a whole new host of worries once you have the baby. I've been reading up, and there's like SIDS and all this other stuff, and all these different rules, and you gotta swaddle or your baby's colicky, and I mean, I've been reading a lot, and I don't know if that's been helping or hurting my general anxiety over the whole child birthing process. But I mean, if you talk to a lot of parents, there's a lot of horror stories, of incidents where you need, prenatal intensive care. Is it prenatal? Well, anyway, the intensive care, for babies, and or miscarriages can be really difficult. You invested so much into having that baby, and then it's taken away from you without any rhyme or reason, and babies can be born prematurely, too early, and that can cause all sorts of problems. And so I think it's understandable that there's a lot of fear and anxiety associated with having a child, and that's not something that I was sort of prepped for. I probably should have been. I mean, to some extent, I was worried about being a father, and that is, you can see that in Neverending Nightmares, or at least I would hope that you can see that. Um, you know, Especially in one of the endings, I think it sort of ties that up nicely. That the guilt for not being able to save your daughter, not looking after her, and that's something that terrified me, before we were expecting, and so I mean, but I didn't realize at that point that the 9 months of waiting and praying and hoping our baby is okay would be so challenging. And so that's really what I'm trying to capture through Devastated Dreams, is just that dread. And I mean, there's obviously, I'm very excited, and we're getting close to the end, so that's good. And I think having a baby that you can have and hold and love and interact with is going to be even more emotionally fulfilling than interacting with your wife's stomach. But I think it's tough. It's tough to make it to that point. At least it's been challenging for me, and all in all, I think our pregnancy is pretty standard. Everything's going, okay. But I think it's just been, there's been scares and things that seem abnormal, but when tested, everything's okay. But I mean, it's just those scares are so severe. Especially, we got sort of an incorrect diagnosis at one point from our doctor, and I mean, I felt like my heart had been ripped out, and then fortunately it didn't turn out to be true. But I mean, like, it was so devastating because this baby means so much to me. Sorry. And I mean, I think, well, at least to me, it's a very emotionally moving subject, and I think that's something we want to capture in the game, and it's certainly, I don't think, something we capture well yet, but as I've talked about, I want to add more interaction and more feeling, more of a connection between mother and child, and build on that, and make the player care about their unborn child, because I think then it'll really capture the horror. It'll really sting when the Mananagal sucks the baby out, through your belly button. I mean, that's gonna hurt worse than the gruesome deaths in Neverending Nightmares. And I think that interesting thing is that I think that sort of anxiety, those fears, those feelings. I think that's what the sort of where the origin of the folklore is. I think trying to give meaning to these horrible disasters that can take a child away from you. And again, I have nothing to base this off of other than my own opinion. I'm pulling this out of my butt. However, I think it seems like it would ring true that people, especially if you don't have a good idea of medicine, and honestly, it seems like medicine doesn't really have a good idea why there are like miscarriages and whatnot. I mean, speaking to my doctor, it's just like, oh, well, maybe the baby will reject it, and it's probably for the best because, probably the baby wouldn't survive. Probably. I mean, that's not, and I mean, I don't know, maybe there are people more knowledgeable than my doctor, but just, that wasn't a very satisfying response to me. I didn't feel like, oh, okay, that's cool, I totally understand miscarriages, and it all makes perfect sense. But I think, trying to give meaning to that, trying to understand that, and I think that, in general, it's a difficult concept to understand. Why do these bad things happen to good people, right? Why, are you deprived of the ones you love? And so I think, ascribing a villain, creating a monster that is the cause, I think is through folklore is a way of coping with that. And I think ascribing stories and reasons in terms you can understand has really been the role of folklore. Throughout the centuries. I mean, if you look at a lot of old classic stories, it's explaining the movement of the sun and the stars in the sky, right? People didn't realize that there's these balls of fire, millions of miles away. Well, I mean, some, light years away for other stars, that just happen to, show up in our sky, and they operate on nuclear fusion, and right, like, if you're someone with, living, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, right, like, you can't understand that at all. That makes no sense. But, if it's a story about, a god or some creatures moving, or, Orion appearing in the sky or something like that, the stars commemorate that person or something, or represent that person. I think that's and certainly there's a lot of legends of the Big Dipper, or the Little Dipper, and why it's in the sky, or the Ursa, the bear, and I mean, all these stories are really just trying to explain that which you can't comprehend. And I think the folklore of the Philippines, and again, this is just my seat of the pants speculation, is trying to give that same meaning to the things that people can't understand, things that are difficult to understand. And I think that's valuable. I think that is a valuable thing to society. If things just happen with no meaning, I think it's hard to come to terms with them. It's hard to feel like there's a purpose, there's a meaning, and it's easy to get discouraged. So I think folklore certainly has value, whether it's true or not. But I don't know. Maybe there are a swang in the Philippines. Certainly, I'm open to the possibility that there are things that we don't understand with science. And there's things we don't discover or haven't discovered yet. And actually, there's an interesting. I'll probably talk about it more in another update. But there's a particular a swag that's kind of like I think it's called a sigbin. I don't know, but I think it's kind of like a chupacabra in terms of the role it plays. And then people discovered some animal, or at least they think they discovered a new animal in Borneo that might be similar to that creature. And so maybe, these people talking about this myth, what is thought to be a mythological creature, is actually a real thing. Although I don't know how much evidence there is in the new creature. But anyway, more on that later. Anyway. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening to my little story about my own experience, being a dad. But I think it's really more universal than just me. I don't think I'm the only one who faces these anxieties and stresses. So thanks for watching.